I'm really honored to be here. Barbara, thanks for organizing. It's great. So I came here actually in January '69, although I was hired to come here in '68. I'm a Chicago economist. I don't know if all you people know what that means. Milton Friedman was one of my professors.
Maybe.
And my first job was in Washington, D.C. at the Brookings Institution before I came here. And I became a political activist around the war, as well as writing books about Latin American trade, even though my thesis was about education. So when I came to be interviewed here, I was part of that wave. That wave happened to be 4 people, by the way. And 4 social scientists were hired in 1968. We all came more or less at once. It was not driven, I don't think, by any intellectual shift in the university. I think it was driven by the Ford Foundation that gave all these professorships to Stanford, not just in the School of Education, but in the political science department and elsewhere. And the Ford Foundation was, at that time, in the 1960s, we just have a historian at Stanford who's written a book about it, School of Education, about what happened at the University of Chicago through the Ford Foundation. Ford Foundation was trying to change the way people thought about a lot of fields, and they felt that social science, rational social science, was the way to do it. So they brought us here. I told Tom James when he interviewed me, I told him that it was very unlikely that I would come because at the time I was I ran Bobby Kennedy's primary in D.C., and we won big, and I was on my way out to Los Angeles to work on the California primary, and I stopped here and gave a talk, and Tom says, "We want to give you the job," and I said, I think I'm going to be in the White House, but, give me the offer anyway. But so things happened, and I came to Stanford, and I was hired into the International and Comparative Education program, and it's been economics of education, which I'm also associated with, and comparative education are 2 very growing fields, and I'm happy that both of them are growing at the same time. Gives me a lot of clout in business and policy influence. It's great to be in that situation, much better than to be in a dying field. So I don't know how much you know about international education at Stanford. You may not realize how important a program it is, not just in the school, but in the university. On average, we've had 3 professors, 3 faculty members, not professors necessarily, but 3 faculty members, assistant professors and professors, in that program. And out of the 2,000 PhDs that have been produced from 1970 to 2016 in the School of Education, 220 of them have been in international education, 11%. And plus more than 1,000 master's degrees, the second largest program after STEP. We have people literally all over the world in influential positions. We have populated all the international programs in the country are populated by our graduates because of our focus on training. And when Dan said, which has now become practically my only claim to fame in the School of Education, I produced these 100 PhDs. Nobody ever paid attention to me until I told Barbara this fact, and all of a sudden people started coming to me in the halls and saying, "Wow," things like that. So, but it's actually one of the proudest things for me to have done this. because I think this is the real legacy of the School of Education. I mean, all these waves going back and forth and all this kind of stuff. The fact that we produce so many teachers, really excellent teachers, the fact that we produce all these policy people, the fact that we've had presidents of countries that have been our PhDs, and that we have all these faculty members all over the country been our PhDs. Our School of Education, percentage-wise, produces more academics than any other university in the country. It's true. We have the highest percentage of academics, people taking academic jobs coming out of School of Education, of any university. So what's interesting is that not only do we produce all these people, we as a program, and I have to say this about the economics of education too, but not quite as much. The international program, the research in the international program, has transformed the field nationwide and worldwide, really worldwide. We've done more theoretical work here at Stanford in this international comparative education than any other place, by far. We were voted by far the most influential program in the world by our colleagues in the field. This was in 2004. And even, I want to say that not only did we do that, but international education was probably the first international program in the university. Paul Hanna, who founded the program in '64, way back in the early 40s, I mean, even in the 30s, he came here in '36. He had written a social studies textbook for Scott Forsman that had made him a lot of money in the middle of the Depression, and he was able to build the Hanna House. He had met Frank Lloyd Wright in New York when he was a professor at TC, and had gotten Frank Lloyd Wright to design his house for him and his wife. It was supposed to cost $36,000. It ended up costing $51,000. I don't know if you've ever seen it. I mean, if you imagine a house costing $51,000 to build. Anyway, the fact that he had $51,000 in the 1930s was already amazing. He did pretty well. He bought some redwood stands with other professors here in the school, and they did even better. Anyway, didn't give any of his money to the school, by the way. Gave it to the Hoover Institution. There's a big story about that, why that happened. Anyway, I mean, there are different versions of this story, but there's some consistency. In any case, what's interesting about Hanna was that back in the 30s, Stanford, as a private institution, depended on tuition. Now, if you're depending on tuition in the middle of the Depression, you might be in trouble. And we were in trouble. But Herbert Hoover, who was chairman of the Board of Trustees at the time, so hated Roosevelt that he would not take any federal money. Other universities were getting federal money. Hoover refused. And the university almost went broke because Hoover refused to take money. Finally, and Hanna was trying to get him to take federal money. And eventually, Hanna and another professor established an office in Washington and started bringing money after Pearl Harbor. You know, everybody had to support the president, even Hoover. Anyway, so, well, he got pretty burned, you know, so I can imagine he wasn't happy. But the point is that Hanna played such a key role in bringing international perspective to the university. And he was very active in the 40s and 50s. He had a vision of education that education would be, you know, our post-World War II policy was mainly to take over, to say American democracy was going to save the world. And it was really an idealistic movement, the United Nations included. And he was part of that. And this program in '64 was really the first kind, even before Latin American studies, they were just forming, even later, and all these area studies, they didn't exist. And international education existed. So Stanford has since become, of course, a global brand. I'm sure you know that. Do you know that? It's a global brand. And our international program continues to be a leading player in that brand. we define, in part, that brand. In Mexico City in 1991 was the only event of the centennial held outside of the United States. There was an event in Mexico City as part of our centennial in 1991. The two biggest groups in Mexico at that centennial event were engineering and School of Education. All right. So I just want you to know that the School of Education is part of the international branding of Stanford University. It started with us, and it continues with us. We probably produce more genuinely international students to go out and work as international students, not to come here and populate Silicon Valley, but to actually go back and work in international areas, probably than any other department at the university. So that's it. I want you to know you're international. And we're making sure that continues. I'm going to have Dan ask us some questions about why we've had so much trouble maintaining ourselves in the school. But the fact is that we're doing pretty well now, and we're really happy with the way the school's treating us today. Thank you.